Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our global read today in Active Hope with Chris Johnstone and our host, Ellen Sefarti. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Serfati, but it's
Serfati,
okay.
there you go.
Whatever.
There you go. Thank you. My name is Felipe. I'm part of the Charter family, and I am here to welcome you and to let you know a couple of things before we get started with this. So let me just share my screen so you can see a couple of things. First of all, this is our global read. Active Hope, as you can see, how to face the mess we're in with unexpected resilience and creative power. And this is the revised edition. As you see right here, our co-author Chris Johnstone and Ellen, our facilitator, are here with you. Don't forget that we have our CEI course, Dealing with Anxiety, starting on February 13th. This is a course for 5 weeks, and the tuition is $29. You can sign up going to our website, charterforcompassion.org. And as well as our next course with Kathleen Coyne, who's doing Introduction to Compassionate Listening. Oh, I don't know what this is. The Light Compassion to a Conflicted World that starts on March 13th. So that is what we have. And so far, we also have an activity every last Saturday of the month. We call it Charter Sangha. This is done by Orla Sullivan. And it's a moment that we take every last Saturday to meditate, to check in with each other, and to take a breather from everything that is going on, which sometimes is quite necessary. So with that, I want to leave you all with Ellen. And if you have any questions, please leave it on the chat. There will be a time at the end for a Q&A as well. This will be recorded and added to our YouTube channel and to our social media platforms as well. So with that, Ellen.
Thank you. So, Felipe, thank you so much. And thanks to Marilyn and Lynn and everyone who helped set this up. And I want to say a special thanks to Steve Kramer and the other members of the environmental sector who came up with this idea to talk about Active Hope today in the middle of my course, How to Be an Activist for the World. Joanna Macy planned to be with us, but as many of you know, she's still recovering from a recent hospitalization. We know she's with us in spirit, and we send her deep gratitude and prayers for healing. And with that, I have the great honor of introducing Chris Johnstone, who Chris, it's such amazing to have gotten to meet you through this preparation, and because I really consider you such a root teacher and such an inspiration for me that's pretty new to facilitating the work that reconnects. I want to welcome you to the Global Read. And when I asked Chris to send me his background so I could introduce him, I was just intrigued and I began exploring. After specializing in psychology, Chris became a doctor in 1986. And I found out as a junior doctor, he took on the mammoth task of leading a campaign to improve the conditions, especially the hours of junior doctors. And many believed little could be done, and Chris showed everyone that he could defy pessimism and bring successful outcome to a problem and enhance our personal power. And this led him to training a variety of approaches for facilitating change, including coaching and therapy, and leading to his first book, Find Your Power. His approach is holistic, focusing on the context of the whole person. And we can see this approach in how he views the crises of our world. He's worked with addiction, resilience, and worked closely with Joanna Macy to apply his techniques to global issues, which led to the first and now the second edition of Active Hope. He says, joy doesn't come from banishing sadness, but from listening to the signals painful feelings offer, and then finding our power to respond in a way that improves things. Living with his wife, Kirsty, in a small village in Northern Ireland, he's an enthusiast of growing fruit, forests, and playing music, which you're going to hear a little of later. And whether in addressing personal or planetary issues, Chris's enthusiasm, leadership, and skill in helping and guiding what he calls the mighty river of active hope is an inspiration. So welcome, a deep-hearted welcome to you, Chris, and deep gratitude for you being with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you everyone who's watching and participating in this too. Thanks
so much. Chris, we decided that since the book is all about practicing active hope, we're going to start with a practice that you introduce in the book, But first, Active Hope tells us that when times get tough, we can become characters in a story of the great turning to embark quests and search for allies. So I think I'd like to start out by asking you, what is your story, Chris? When did you first encounter this work, Joanna Macy, and how did you embark on your journey of Active Hope?
So I was a young man in the 1980s, a time of superpower tensions, and part of my medical training I spent in Sri Lanka, and I was deeply shocked by encountering human starvation for the first time, and really kind of feeling I want to do something. I want to do something about this, but also kind of just finding this like background acceptance that here we are, there's all these problems, the world spends so much on armaments at a time when hundreds of millions of people starve. And I didn't really see anyone who was really addressing the big issue of why aren't more people doing more? Why is the default response of our society to be kind of turning away from some of the biggest issues of our time? And in Joanna Macy's writings, which I came across, I was lucky enough to come across while I was still in my early 20s, I really found that she put her finger on something where she um, identified the way we deal with our pain for the world as one of the key kind of leverage points that if we think this is too painful, I can't look, that makes it more likely that we'll turn away. But if we can find context where we can, what she calls honor our pain for the world, make space for it, learn from it, be activated, um, in, disturbed by it in a way that moves us to do something about it. Um, that is a powerful transformative opportunity, and I experienced that coming to workshops. My first workshop in 1985, and then I sought out a number of workshops in the late 1980s, and then worked with Joanna in 1989 in what for me was a sense of discovery. It's like, this is it. This is what I want to do with my life. It's like I found something which um, is powerfully transformative and activating in a way that our world really needs. And so that kind of got me started, and I've been at it ever since.
Yeah, that's wonderful, especially when you're talking about transformative. I felt the energy, and my experience is so much more recent than yours, but it is an incredibly transforming experience. Let me just ask you before we go into these sentence starters, what was it like working with Joanna? And tell us about your journey of writing the book, Active Hope, and now you're in the second edition after the 10th anniversary. What an amazing experience. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, my biggest feeling is gratitude, really. Gratitude to Joanna, who's been such an important friend and teacher and guide and mentor for me. And I feel like working with Joanna, it has so many chapters. It's a whole volume in itself. So there I was in 1989. I was going through a really difficult time in my life. I was experiencing a depressive episode linked to severe exhaustion of working crazy hours as a junior hospital doctor. And but I got in with the group of people who were running workshops based on the work of Joanna Macy in Britain, and I apprenticed myself to them. And so every time Joanna came over to the UK, I found that I was part of the core team of people supporting her. Maybe not every time, but certainly over many occasions when Joanna came over, I'd often find myself amongst the support team, working with Joanna. And so over those number of times, and then I also in 1993 I did some advanced training in the States with Joanna too, and a month at Schumacher College in 1994. Um, I got to the point that this was sort of way on, really, 2008. I just had this feeling I, I'd love to, having worked with Joanna then for about 20 years, I'd love to have a recorded conversation with her, holding the question, what helps us face our concerns about the world? Such an important question. There's
Mhm.
so much to be concerned about, but what helps us? What helps us face our concerns and respond in a way that can contribute to positive change? And so we met up, I had a record, started talking away, and we had such a rich conversation. It was actually when she was visiting Bristol, where I lived at the time in southwest Britain. And I thought, this is, I didn't know why I recorded her, what it was. It wasn't for a specific purpose at the time. I just had a sense that it would be really good to record the conversation and see where it went. And then I pitched to Joanne. I said, look, this is so useful, this conversation. Why don't we have some more and turn it into a book about um, bringing together our conversations, exploring this such important question. What's the best of what we found? What are the tools? What are the insights? What are the practices? Let's pull them together. And from that, we came up with the idea of what would it be like to take a reader through the same journey that we offer in a workshop. That there are some people who might never come to a workshop, and Joanna's workshops are amazing. Certainly the
Mhm.
ones I've been to over the years. Deeply, richly experienced facilitator, and really knows this work because she's developed it over a period of 4 decades, and I've kind of come in alongside her. I've been involved for over 3 decades now. But what would it be like to guide the reader on a similar journey that you have in a workshop? And there's a structure here, a spiral call of the work that reconnects. The work that reconnects is the name given to this workshop form, and it takes people on a journey that begins with gratitude practices. And the thing about gratitude is that a lot of people, when they think about and feel about what's happening in our world, that there can be a fear of becoming overwhelmed. It's like, if I look at that, I might sink into this hole that's just so deep I'll never come out. So I've heard people say fears, express fears like that. But what gratitude work does is it resources us. It gives us a stronger starting point to face difficult information. So there's much more to gratitude too. Social evolutionary psychologists think about gratitude as as having played a key role in the development of human cooperative behavior. That when you experience gratitude, your willingness and tendency to want to give back are increased. It increases pro-social and pro-environmental behavior, and that's plenty of research that backs that up. So that's the starting point. But then we go on this journey where, having done some gratitude work together, which in a group setting does amazing things for building trust and a sense of safety in the group,
Mhm.
but also for ourselves, if we're thinking about this as a personal experience, that there's some very disturbing documentary on tonight, for example, or some YouTube video that I've seen that maybe feels a bit too disturbing to even look at. Okay, maybe what I need to do is stock up on some gratitude first, do some gratitude work first, as a way of giving me a stronger starting point from which to face the difficult material, and also something to step back into if it ever feels too much. If I find that looking at the disturbing information is too much and I'm closing down, shutting down, just feeling overwhelmed, it's like, okay, I'm going to step back into the gratitude. It's like that's a safety net. It's
Mhm.
gratitude is a social emotion that points our attention out to the network of support that we receive from. And so there it is. All the people we say, I'd like to thank. So on this journey, begin with gratitude, but then move into honoring our pain for the world. And just that term, honoring our pain, I think if someone comes knocking at the door and you were to really honor them as a welcome guest, how might you receive them? You'd open the door, you'd welcome them in. But is that what happens to pain for the world? When pain for the world comes knocking on our door, very often the door remains shut. It's like, you're unwelcome, you're not wanted here. Pain for the world is seen as a threat to mental health. It's seen as a disturber and robber of happiness and joy. Yet at the same time, I think of adventure stories that often begin with a opening, inciting incident of danger, danger and threat to a community. And what makes the story is the way the central characters respond. And I think of the work that reconnects is inviting us into this kind of way of seeing ourselves in these times, rather than this is too much, I can't look. It's like, okay, this is a call to adventure. It is disturbing, but also feelings of disturbance are normal, healthy reactions to information that's disturbing. And if we think of it as a bit like an alarm call, fire alarms don't sound nice. They're not easy on the ears, but they save lives through activating life-preserving responses. And if we look the same way at our pain for the world, and there's more that we can say about this, because one way of, we talk about this work that reconnects, it's a process of connecting with ourselves, actually having a deeper experience of what's going on inside of us, rather than having areas of our experience that are blocked off and taboo. So connecting with ourselves, with our deeper sense of what's going on, connect. So it's amazing we can do this online, just hearing from each other sort of about our concerns for the world, knowing it's reassuring to find that we're not alone, that many of the concerns we have are likely to be shared by others. So in the workshop, this is the time where we have circles of listening to each other, and sharing of our concerns. And that's the journey that Joanna and I take people on in the book Active Hope. We have a time where we look at ways of engaging with our distress, but in a way that we don't have to turn away from it. We can be alongside it and actually draw out benefits from it. They sound a bit strange, but I've been working on this idea of growing treasure inside ourselves. Like, what are the qualities, strengths, insights, stories inside ourselves that are so valuable that we can think of them as forms of treasure? And in some ways, our pain for the world, if it alerts us to what's happening in the world in a way that activates a response, that's as valuable as
Absolutely.
treasure.
I agree with you, 100%.
In the same way that you so this really makes sense
Oh,
to you, Ellen.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the people who are going to are here with us now and listening to this are part of this How to Be an Activist course. So this is a perfect message for them. And it's definitely. Let me ask you this, Chris. We wanted to do a popular practice in the Work That Reconnects, open questions that are part of the 7 starters from your chapter 2. And we want to kind of bring in the people who are listening to you right now into this whole experience and help you all arrive, give you an idea how you can use these in your life. So as Chris and I go through these, we're just going to do a few of these sentences here. You can reflect on your own responses, or you can write them down or in the chat. And even if you've read Active Hope or you've already been through workshops on the Work That Reconnects, we're going to invite you to kind of come to this as a beginner, to be open. And before Chris and I start this, and it's kind of a very quick back and forth of practice questions, Chris, could you tell us about this practice, about how you came up with the 7 starters, and about what open questions, and just in general, why your book is so focused on practice, what that means?
Yes, thank you, Ellen. So, and linked to that, we were describing this journey around the spiral, and we've taken the first 2 steps. So I'd love to share a slide if I can just
Sure,
now.
absolutely.
And what I wanted to do is just give a overall shape to the journey that we're taking, but also then introduce this practice. So if I share, and then pardon the putting this up here. Here we go. So I want to say thank you to Dory Midnight, artist, who produced this fabulous image here, describing the spiral of the work that reconnects. So we've begun with gratitude. It's like a root system that we can draw in nourishment, but also honoring our pain for the world. Like leaves taking in sunlight can be energizing. You know, we can be energized by our concerns. But also, I think of gratitude and honoring our pain as about being present, about taking in a view of what's there. But also, it's like, well, where do we take it from there? Where do we take it after that? And very often, people can acknowledge their pain, but also feel a sense of, well, what can I do? One of the commonest feelings that comes up when people think about their concerns for the world is powerlessness, the sense of very common saying, you can't change the world. And in some ways, I think if only that were true, you know, if only it were true that we couldn't change the world, we wouldn't have climate change. We wouldn't have a mass extinction event happening right now. But we can change the world. The problem is we're changing it in the wrong direction. So what happens with the next part of the spiral is looking for encouraging and empowering and inspiring perspectives, and think of that as seeing with new eyes, opening to new perspectives. But then also going forth is about looking at, well, where do we take this, what's our role in this? And if I just do one more jump, so we're gonna we're going to do this practice where we're going to go round this spiral, and I just want to bring up here this image here. Sorry about all this chopping and changing, but we're thinking, how do you introduce this spiral, which forms the kind of core shape of a workshop? How do you introduce that to somebody who's never really done something like that before? How do you have an easy version that you can do just in maybe half an hour or even shorter if it's done as a personal practice, or even just with two people? And we came up with 7 steps. We call it the 7-point spiral, and we've got this image here which talks us through it, and it's based on sentence starters. A sentence starter is where you have the beginning of a sentence and you just see what naturally follows it. So we could try this together. So if we're going around this spiral, so we talked about this image here of the gratitude, honoring our pain, seeing with new eyes, and going forth is like the seeds. But if we say, well, okay, let's just do this as a practice together. And gratitude, there's like different aspects of gratitude, but one is about appreciation. What are you grateful for? And another is about thanksgiving. Who are you grateful to? And think of that as 42, the 42 of gratitude. What are you grateful for? Who are you grateful to? And a great way to begin appreciation is just to have the words I love, and just see what naturally follows that. And we could do that together now. And were you thinking that we'd invite people just to write in the chat window what
Yes, I
naturally
can.
comes? And so if you're watching this now, if you're watching a recording, just get a bit of paper or just speak openly to yourself, have the words going, I love, and then see what naturally follows. There might be people, places, pets, activities, qualities that you love, particular images you love, pieces of music, whatever. So I'm going to suggest that we do this the short form, and I'm going to set a timer just for 1 minute, and inviting you to write, okay, I love. And shall we read it between us, Ellen? I think
Yeah.
people are already writing in there. See from Lena, and
Yes,
I'll invite you just to read what you see in the chat, Ellen, and I'm pressing
sure.
the time.
So we're starting out with I love, is that right? I
Yes.
love children, the Amazon rainforest. I love walks in the woods. I love little brown bats at stone cairns and the healing balm of nature. My grandchildren, big trees, and this is birds, my husband. I love sunbeams piercing the forest. I love being here in this chat space with all of you, hugging a tree in the sunshine outside. Thank you, Jane, who's in our chorus. And Corey loves my daughter. Thank you. And Jeanette, the sound of the wind in the tall cedars. And Maria loves sunshine and ravens, equity and fairness. And Lena loves humanity. Steve loves nature, friends and family, sunshine, laughter, smiles, and hugs and community.
Thank you. And so that's our minute. That's our minute up. And it's lovely hearing you, Ellen, because you're the voice of this group. And we're sharing our appreciations. And notice how you feel when you focus on what you love. How do you feel in your body? Does it feel the same or slightly different to how you felt even just 3 or 4 minutes ago?
And you all can throw that in the chat as well, if you want to type
Yes,
that in.
how do you
That's a
feel?
great
Just a
question.
moment
And
of
I just have to
reflection. Do you
say,
feel
just when I was reading through what some of the students in the course and people are saying, the immense gratitude of being part of this process. And Chris, how beautifully you're leading it. It's just incredible. And people here saying what they're feeling feels warm and safe. It feels bigger, more spacious, more connected. It feels lighter. Relief and optimism. This is lovely how we can come from this troubled world into smiling, lighter. I feel uplifted and softer. Lena says it's a wave of energy.
So what I want to introduce here is the idea of active hope as a practice. And some people do mindfulness or Tai Chi or yoga as practices for well-being every day. And this is a practice for well-being, this 7-point spiral, the 7 sentence starters, but also introducing more broadly the idea of active hope as a practice we can engage in every day, where we're active in supporting our hopes, making our hopes more likely, heading more towards them. But also, it's not just some active supporting our hopes, but also active supporting our capacity to make a difference. And that's what we're doing with this practice. It's like keeping ourselves in shape, as it were. It's like if I'm going to act to support my hopes, I need to be in a good place. I need to look at what helps me be steady, what helps me stand tall when facing something difficult rather than just being knocked down. And so this is our starting point. We're doing this together as a practice. And I also really get a sense of us, wherever we are in the world, as kind of like reaching out, holding hands, hearing the joys of other people, what they really love. And there's so much echoed too with things that I love, people, places I love, experiences I love. So this is where we begin. And also, we're here for a purpose. We're here at a time when our world is in crisis and we need to reach out for support. And sometimes we can feel very alone, but gratitude reminds us that we're not alone. There's all kinds of people, and not just people, but entities of all kinds who've played a role supporting us. And if we think, what supported me? Who supported me? For supporting me to live, I give thanks to. That's an open sentence sometimes we explore. But what we're going to do just right now, we're moving around on our 7-point spiral, is the sentence starter, I'd like to thank. And so inviting all of you listening, whether to the live webinar or the recording, just to see where those words take you. I'd like to thank. 1 minute on your chosen thankfulnesses, beginning now. Just write in. I'd like to thank, and inviting you, Ellen, to just read what comes.
Sure. Grace. I'd like to thank Grace, Donna says, and I'd like to thank my husband, the man of my dreams. How lovely. And Joanna Macy. Yes. And I'd like to thank nature and my direct family, my cats for the joy they bring me, for volunteers. Absolutely with you, Dawn. I'd like to thank the helpers in the soil and things. Oh, there's so many here. It's just jumping up. All of my teachers and my mother, a friend who proves my work, our ancestors, which is interesting because sometimes we say seeing with new and ancient eyes in the work that reconnects. So that's a wonderful thing to remind us of. Maria, thanks the songbirds. Thank you all. And people who saw me and supported me in my career and my life. Beautiful. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. And so that's our minute. And you might think, well, a minute's not very long, but it's just opening. And what we're doing here is we're looking at a form that we can use any day, any time. And particularly if you find yourself knocked down sometimes by bad news about the world, say, okay, I just need to do this transformative strengthening practice. I'm going to do a quick spiral. I'm just going to start by saying, I love, and see what comes. And then I'm going to say, I'd like to thank, and see what comes. But also, we're making space here to hear our concerns too, and to give them some airtime, because often in conversations they can be seen as it's a taboo topic. It's like, oh, if you talk about your concerns for the world, you're seen to be pretty depressing company. But actually, we're having a structure here where we're having time, where we're opening the door, we're honoring our pain for the world. If there's concerns there, we say, welcome in, let me hear you. Let me hear what you have to say. So we have a beginning sentence that goes, looking at the future we're heading into, my concerns include, and I'm just going to write that there. I'm going to write that there.
Chris, you muted yourself. Do you want to unmute? There you go.
Thank you. It was
Sure.
just while I was typing that sentence starter into the chat window. If I type it unmuted, you get a whole lot of tapping. So I just wanted to, so looking at the future we're heading into, my concerns include 1 minute.
Okay, so if y'all can
inviting you.
type in there, inviting anybody that would like to say, what are your concerns? The concerns of brothers and sisters who are wishing for our earth, slow suffering beings and the loss of care. Absolutely. The deepest destabilizing grief. Thank you so much. Lena says despair, the trauma humans are suffering. Incivility, what a wonderful word. Increasing greed, the sixth mass extinction. Old narratives of domination. Suffering for those who come after. The implosion of democracy and the snowballing increase of polarization leading to World War III. Looking at the future, we're concerned about, those concerns include water, air, soil, not being able to support life, mass starvation. Indeed. Thank you, everybody, for honoring your pain for the world. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
And just inviting people also to notice how you're feeling just now. We're on a journey, and we're allowing ourselves to be shaken and stirred in a way that might help mobilize our response. And the thing is, if you feel uncomfortable just now, it's because you've noticed, and it's because you care. If you hadn't noticed, and if you didn't care, you might feel just supremely, chilled out right now. And Joanna Macy has this wonderful term, premature equanimity. That sometimes there can be a seeking of peacefulness in a way that there's a bit too quick a rush to it, in a way that might bypass the distress, but also can undermine our activation to respond. That's one of the ways that there can be a blocking of our response. So if you feel uncomfortable, know that that's a normal, healthy response. But there's also, we feel what we feel, whatever that is, different things at different times, but we feel what we feel. And I'm taking in Corey, brought to tears. And I feel that too. I feel stirred. I feel stirred hearing, Ellen, you sharing what's here. And we feel what we feel, and we have choices about where we take that, how we respond to it. And so what we're doing, I think I'm just going to stop share just for a moment, and I'm just going to
Mhm.
hold my hands here like this. I once saw Thich Nhat Hanh give a talk, and he was asked, what do we do with our anger? And he just held out his hands like this. We hold it in our attention. So if you feel something that feel that you're paying for the world, if you feel shaken, stirred, guilt, sad, rage, whatever it is, it's just saying, okay, I'm holding that in my attention. If we do this as shared practices, we find that we're not alone. Think that there's a place for individual practices too, in the same way that we might do sometimes mindfulness or Tai Chi or yoga by ourselves. But sometimes we do it with the support and company of others in a way that
Mhm.
deepens and strengthens it. So as communities together. And I think that the
Definitely.
key thing here is taking it out of the hidden awareness, because you can have a room where everyone is deeply distressed about what's happening in our world, but everyone also thinks they're the only one because everyone else is hiding it away. And practices like this, there can be immense reassurance where people say things like, I'm so relieved to hear I'm not alone. We may not have exactly the same concerns, but to know that we may have similar concerns, there may be echoes, there may be resonance with others. But then there's also, okay, going around the spiral, the first two parts are gratitude and honoring pain for the world, about being present, about being with what's there. But then we're on a quest to strengthen our capacity to respond. And we're going to be doing a sentence that goes, facing these concerns, what inspires me is. And um, let's do that. Let's do that. I'm
Okay.
going to just write in the chat window. So I'm going to mute myself just while I do that. Before facing these concerns, what inspires me is.
So facing these concerns, what inspires everybody can start thinking about that and responding in the chat. And Donna says hope. And Lisa says the light within all of us. Jennifer, the capacity for the human heart. Facing these concerns, what inspires me is inspiration, people who share in my journey. Beautiful. Jeanette says how people are stepping forward. Lena, the human resilience. Great point. And those in the courses right now, this is Naomi speaking. Good to see you, Naomi. What inspires me is people making change, seeing people gathering together to take action. Stories of how ordinary people mustered the courage to act. Learning the work that reconnects. Wonderful, Laurie Prue. And the people, Corey says the people here, the response of young people and people here definitely being together in a community doing these practices is so important. Thank you. And we've got time now from Chris. Chris, you're still muted.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
I feel strengthened. And a lot of people said people, the
Mm,
responses of others. And in the work that reconnects, one of the things we focus on is what happens through us. That's a question we often reflect on. And in Active Hope,
yes.
Joanna and I write about that. What happens through us? And one thing that happens through us is stories. Stories happen through us. And it's also one of our choice points. We can choose the story we put ourselves behind. And we write a lot about the story of the great turning. And in terms of seeing with new eyes, seeing differently, one of the things Joanna and I wrote about was that the idea of if you have a shift from outcome, so outcome is the great turning, is this turning towards the sustainable civilization, a civilization that supports the flourishing of life. And what I was hearing from people was a sense of, well, that's all very nice, but I can't see it happening. Can't see it happening anywhere near enough or fast enough. But if you, pardon me, if you shift emphasis from outcome, will it happen? Am I hopeful? Those kinds of questions, to process, what does it look like from moment to moment? If the great turning was happening through us right now, what would we be doing? And one of the key actions is turning up with an intention to play our part. And so I'm having a bit of a time here to reflect on facing these concerns. What inspires me? What inspires me is our willingness to turn up with the intention to play our part. And in that, there are things we can turn away from, ways of being and doing and acting that cause harm, and turn towards that which supports the flourishing of life, that which supports what our deep hopes for the future. And so that's what we move to in the next part of the spiral, which is really looking at what would it look like through us? What is it we want to turn up for and turn away from and turn towards? And so I'm going to share screen just again. We're on this journey around this spiral, and we're now moving from seeing with new eyes, that's the inspires, what inspires me is, to going forth. And going forth is very much about finding our role. And there's 3 linked open sentences here, so we're going to take them one at a time. And the first one is
Chris, I just want to remind you, we got about 20 minutes and we're going to show the video too. So
okay.
maybe we'll pick
Okay.
just one of the sentences and then focus back on some of the questions, if that's okay with you.
What I'd suggest is that we take the 3 together, because they
Okay,
work
that's
together as a
great.
piece. So we'll have a minute. So maybe just think about this first. So looking at the future we're heading into, what I deeply hope for is. So what I'm going to suggest that you write in the chat window is maybe just a word or short part of sentence for each of these. So looking at the future, what I deeply hope for is. So that's number 1. There might be just one or a few words. And a part I'd like to play in support of this is. So there might be, okay, I hope for this, but something I'd like to do is this. And then a step I'll take towards this in the next week is. Now, you might think I need some time to think about this, but when we put ourselves under time pressure, it's interesting how we can sometimes surprise ourselves by what comes up. So let's do that. Let's give ourselves these 3 sentence starters at once. So looking at the future we're heading into, what I deeply hope for is, a part I'd like to play in support of this is, and a step I'll take towards this in the next week. And what I'm going to invite people to do is write all 3 of those and then press the return button on your keyboard, so that we get all 3 of those grouped together. It doesn't matter if you don't do it that way, but it's often good to hear those 3 grouped together. So let's do it. So inviting you to looking at the future we're heading into, what I deeply hope for is, a part I'd like to play in support of this is, and a step towards this I'll take in the next week. Ellen, just inviting you to read what's there. We've got a minute.
Thank you, Chris. We can take some extra time too, because Philippi is telling me people really seem to be into this, so I don't want to rush us through this. This is a beautiful process, and I'm so deeply grateful to you. So David in New York is saying, what I deeply hope for is a positive cascade. And let's see, Lisa is saying, I deeply hope for the conscious recognition of our connectedness and the value of all life. And Steve is saying, justice, and continue volunteering with the charter and connecting on the local scene. And Nadia, natural regeneration, inspire humanity, practice compassion. What a beautiful thing to say, Nadia. Thank you. And Jeanette, transformation, develop compassion and activism, re-engagement with humans. Many of us feel that. And Lynn, that more people will see the need to act and become active. My part is as a teacher, and I will share that I'm learning with my friends and online. Perfect, Lynn, continue to share. And Lynn, turning hearts, voicing diverse stories. Yes, keep writing and creating art and voicing. And Dawn, that humanity orients in the direction of love rather than hate. Beautiful. More love,
So,
more kindness. Yes.
and
So many messages.
it's fantastic. It's fantastic reading and hearing you describe what's being said there, but also invite all of you to reflect on what you've written or said for yourself. And actually, what
Mhm.
we're drawing on here, there's a psychological principle backed up by research that when people express change talk, so change talk is a term for any kind of expression in support of a change, which we're talking about. What's the change we deeply hope for? What's the role we'd like to play? What are some steps that we could take even in the next week? Expressing change talk increases the likelihood that we'll take steps in support of that change. And so we're talking ourselves into active hope, actively supporting our hope. Now, this practice that we've just done, we've done it as a group. We've done it in webinars with hundreds of people. You can do it yourself. It's in Active Hope. It's at the end of chapter 2. And we've also got a YouTube video of 2 people doing it in conversation over about half an hour. And that's at activehope.info. If you look at the webinar, the video section there, it's one of the videos there. But we've also got a free video-based online course teaching people practices like this, a whole series of practices at activehope.training.
And
Because
Felipe is just going to tell you, Chris, we have a bunch of links of the things that you're referring to right now. And Felipe is going to put them in the chat. And he also just told me he's going to save the chat too. So
fantastic.
we'll be able to share that with as many people as want to. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Keep going. I didn't want to interrupt you, but just to let you know, we're going to put those all in the chat for everybody.
And I sometimes think before a talk or a webinar, I think like if people could only take away maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things, what would it be? And what I'd love for you to be able to take away is this practice that we've just done, the 7-point spiral, and to see it as something that you can do like regularly. I do it when I'm out taking the dog for a walk. You know, as I'm walking along, I just talk them through in my mind. And I find that what it does is it takes me on a journey where I reflect on what I love, who I'd like to thank, but also what's concerning me at the moment, making room for that. And also making room for that in a way where I'm also taking those concerns on a journey by saying, okay, facing that, what inspires me is, and what I deeply hope for is, and a role I'd like to play in support of that is, and something I can do in the next 7 days is. And what it does is it focuses me. And this question, what happens through you? If I think, okay, what would I love people to take away? So number 1 is this idea that this is a practice we can engage in. But number 2 is this idea that active hope itself is a practice for personal and collective well-being. Like some people do Tai Chi, some people do yoga, mindfulness, you know, as well. Another well-being practice to engage in on a daily basis is active hope. Okay, how can I do my active hope today? And maybe I'll do this 7-point spiral, or maybe there'll be other things I do whenever I'm active in support of my hopes for our future. That's being active hope. But the other thing I'd love people to take away is this idea of thinking of hope as something that happens through us. What if we were to think of hope not so much in terms of hopefulness, but hope as an energy of engagement that happens through us, through our actions and choices, when we're engaged in supporting what we deeply hope for.
Beautiful, beautiful, incredible. Let me just ask you something. One of the students in the course, Don, sent in this question, and you were talking about going for a walk and thinking about gratitude. And as part of the first stage of the journey, I shared some resources and asked people to reflect on awe. And it's become very popular lately because of Dr. Keltner's book, I think, and a lot of people are writing about it. So Don from the course says, how does developing a capacity for awe support active hope in the work that reconnects. How would you reflect on that, Chris?
Yes. Well, first of all, I love the question. And I
Mhm.
already take the fact that you're asking this question because you see awe is, it has a place here. And if we talk about, it's interesting, we can talk about honoring our pain for the world. But pain is just one side of the coin. Pain comes from connection when we care. And there's also our love for the world and our awe for the world and our deep gratitude for the world. There's a whole load of positive emotions for our world too. And what if our world was feeling through us? You know, a family feels through its members. A team can also have feelings. Sometimes a team can feel more upbeat, or sometimes a team can feel concerned. It's like the team feels through its members. What if our world was feeling through us? And when we feel awe, it's a bit like our earth is looking at itself or herself, or however we see themselves. You know, the earth is looking at earth and going, wow. And I think that wow is something about treasuring the amazing gift of life, the amazingness of life, of our world, that actually is totally extraordinary. And if we start from the place of saying there's something going on here which is just incredibly awesome, and also I'd love to be in support of that. I'd love to be in support of what I find awesome. So I hope it will continue. I hope the
Mhm.
awesomeness of life will be around for a long time. I also hope that the awesomeness of human potential, you know, there's some aspects of human expression that are amazing, awesome, the love, the kindness, the care that is possible from us. And I'd love that to continue and grow. So that's my hope. How can I be active in making that more likely? How can I be active in heading that way? And when I reflect on those, what it does is it fills my life with a sense of purpose and meaning. And that itself is awesome. So
Mhm.
anyway, I love all. You know, I love all. And I
Yeah.
love all that's awesome. But I also love the awesomeness of what we could potentially bring to the table if we really set about it. If we say, okay, I want to be a practitioner of active hope. I want to make this something that I bring into my life. And it applies to human evolution too. We say, what do we hope humans will develop into? You know, there was a time when dolphins were land-dwelling mammals. And people who say, oh, humans, they'll never change, you know, human nature will never change. If dolphins can go from land-dwelling mammals to swimming so gracefully in the sea, who knows what's possible for us? And hopes give us a navigational signal to follow. What do I
Mhm.
deeply hope for? How can I play a role in support of that? What can I do in the next week that moves in that direction? That kind of orientation, it becomes a stance on life, which means that we end up richer in aliveness, in meaning and purpose.
So true. So true. Chris, I have a feeling that we should show the video now. This is a perfect point.
Sure. Okay.
And Felipe, can you do that for us? Is play the video? Great, thank you.
Active hope is not wishful thinking. Active hope is not waiting to be rescued by the Lone Ranger or some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way and we're here to play our part. With active hope, we realize that there are adventures in store, strengths to discover, comrades to link arms with. Active hope is a readiness to engage. Active hope is a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others, a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love, a readiness to discover the size and strength of our hearts, our quickness of mind, our steadiness of purpose, our own authority, our love for life, the liveliness of our curiosity, the unsuspected deep well of patience and diligence, the keenness of our senses, and our capacity to lead. None of these can be discovered in an armchair or without risk.
Thank you so much, Felipe. I also wanted to mention to you all that if you want to take a deep dive into Active Hope, not only is Chris's course available, but we're starting probably what will be a year-long journey where people in the course will actually learn how to teach the practices. Felipe, if you can put that also in the chat, the connection to that course, the introductory forum is going to start on Sunday. We have just a few minutes left. It's interesting. We just flown through this, Chris, and it's been so incredible to share the journey of the spiral and talk about Active Hope. So I just want to ask you, what can we expect from you in the future? This is the second revision now, and we've talked about how much more compelling these issues are. What can we expect you in the future, and what final words and inspiration and direction can you give us for this incredible journey that we're on? And perhaps we talked about being blocked, but what can you offer us as some final words before we close?
Yes, I think what really is landing with me is this idea of active hope is something we do. It's not something we have so much, but something we do. And then looking at the idea we can learn to do it more skillfully. We can apply growth mindset to our capacity to act for positive change, to make a difference. And so it's kind of saying, well, okay, how do I train myself? And I love this idea of active hope training, is where we train ourselves and each other to get better, looking at what are the strengths, the skills, the insights, the practices that help us show up, help us turn up with an intention to play our part, help us turn away from that which causes harm, help us turn towards the flourishing of life. And what I'd encourage people to do is come on courses like the one that you're running, Ellen, because what you're doing is you're inviting people to look at not only how can you follow the journey in the book Active Hope, but how can you share that journey with others? And I love this term, circles of active hope. Circles of active hope is where we come together with groups of others, and it might just be a few friends. It might just be, hey, I face what's happening in the world and I just feel so sunk by it sometimes. I'd love to find a way of supporting mine and others' responses. So why don't if a few of us get together and we can go on this journey together, we can read this book, we can do the practices. And what I love about what you're doing is you're inviting people to be part of a circle of active hope, but also look how you can be a seed of future circles. How do you have the confidence to say, hey, I'm gonna maybe just put an advert out there or a little card in a shop window, or just send a message to a few friends. I'm going to start this on. Anyone like to come along? And it could be as simple as, I've been deeply troubled by what's happening in the world, and I found some things that are really helpful, and I'd love to go on a journey of exploring them with others. Anyone interested? And see what goes from there.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's definitely a segue into, please check on all of the information we've provided about Chris's courses. and the College of Wellbeing and his website, as well as anybody who's interested in going forward either with this book group or other book groups. And you don't really need, you could just pick up the book and work with the practices in your community, online, wherever you want to. And yes, continue to share this work with everybody. And somebody is asking, can you share this recording? Absolutely. The Work That Reconnects, Active Hope is all about, as Chris is saying, planting seeds. So please, please. And Chris has put in here Active Hope training. Yes, it's a free online course. It's a wonderful, beautiful course that many years ago when I started teaching these Active Hope book groups, I turned to Chris and his work, and it inspired me so much and kind of was just a jump off platform for me and for a lot of the work that we do. And I want to thank everybody who's been here. This is an incredibly moving, Chris. It's been so wonderful to be with you and to share this. And I look forward to our continuing our journey, working together and working with all of you. And thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank
And we
you.
are, thank you. We're going to share this chat too.